part with knitted stockings held up with gauzes, and what covers the rest of your legs differs throughout the century. It could include pantaloons, bloomers, pantalettes, leglets or Turkish trousers. They're all basic upper leg coverings worn under your chemise and tied at the waist. And until the end of the century, the legs don't connect at the top. They are split with a slight overlap for modesty. So, chemise, stockings, garters and crotchless pantalettes. You're still practically naked. All your wobbly bits, well, they're just wobbling. That won't do. Oh, how you'll miss your cherished bra collection on this journey. They won't become popular until the 1920s. For now, we are going to truss you up in your corset. Now, you've seen x-rays of ribs grotesquely crushed by horrid stays, vertical strips made of unforgiving steel or nearly as unpleasant whalebone. How are you going to breathe? How are you going to move at all? Once you're assisted into your corset, front hooked or back laced or both, you'll discover something. Corsets aren't that bad. Even children wore them. They don't have to be tightened to the point of spleen displacement. They can function as legitimate support garments, holding up your chest. For women are fleshly creatures, and many of us feel more comfortable when that flesh is secure. Corsets, like Spanx and bras of the future, provide privacy. Privacy that women are willing to sacrifice a little comfort for. In the 21st century, if your bust is drooping or your bottom a little flat, you can arrange your clothing to keep that information to yourself. But now, dear traveller, you don't have the option of flowing blouses and jeans made from materials that were originally designed for astronauts. You have a corset, and it works pretty well. As for breathing and bending over, there are smaller, shorter corsets that can provide a working woman some support while letting her scrub and sew herself into an early grave. Your chemise is clean, by the way, because one of your maids spent an hour dunking it in near boiling water and lye until her hands cracked and burned, then wringing, hanging, ironing and starching it. It isn't uncommon for even a small household to take 2 days to get the washing done. People say that the pill was the liberation of women. I'm sorry, it was the electric washing machine, trust me. A woman who is not of the working class doesn't have much reason to bend over in the 19th century. And if she does, a lady lowers herself straight back by bending her knees. She does not stick her posterior into the air like a common cat. First, put a loose shirt over the corset. Corset covers prevent everyone from seeing the outlines of your underpinnings. Now, fetch the cage. Cage crinoline, that is. You've happened to land mid-century, during the hooped skirt craze. Yards upon yards of heavy wool have been used to construct your dress. To hold it up, you need to strap on your cage crinoline, and it's precisely what it sounds like. A sturdy wire cage, which is suspended from your hips or shoulders, over which your skirt will rest. These cages, which in their naked state are indistinguishable from something you use to trap wild dogs, have a sensible use. Without one, you won't be able to walk. The cage structure distributes the incredible weight of the fabric and holds the hem away from your feet so you don't trip. Now we add a petticoat or 6. They were useful for storage as well. Now, depending on how much ruffle you need to meet this year's fashion, and hooray, you're ready to have your maids tug your dress over your head and button you up. You look lovely, dear. It makes me almost not want to tell you how uncomfortable and smelly your dress is. No, actually, never mind. We can wait on that for a bit. You look lovely. And now we return to the first question you asked yourself this morning as you looked through your undergarments. Why don't any of the 47 pieces of clothing I'm wearing have a crotch? Well, let's do this. Let me sneak you a pair of your little bikini cuts. You can wear them under everything else. No one will know. In fact, wear them to the ball tonight. There you'll be having a lovely time, eating delicate bonbons and exchanging even more delicate bon mots. Now, run upstairs, squat over a chamber pot and pee really quick and run down to the party. Yes, hoist up that enormous poundage of wool, steel and cotton with one arm and then pull down your underpants with the other. You fell over, didn't you? Yes, and by the time you're all buttoned and laced up again, everyone will suspect you left the party for some more embarrassing reason, such as kissing the stable boy or diarrhea. That is why your dainty bits aren't covered. Because even though no one in Victorian society will admit to it, a lady has to pee. And closed drawers, as they will eventually come to be known, because you draw them up and down, make that practically impossible for a perfectly dressed lady. Now I want you to look at your 19th century shoes. Oh, sorry, next. No, not that one. Sorry, I'm a little bit frazzled. I do hope you'll excuse me. Right, we wouldn't call them shoes today. They're boots, made of black leather, usually ascending halfway up the calf and fitting closely with a hard wooden sole. Once you wedge your foot into them, they are fastened by means of tightly spaced buttons, which, if you're in the unfortunate position to ever having to dress yourself, they're freakishly difficult to manipulate. So difficult that a special button hook was designed to help ladies dressing on their own. So, why don't we see if we can find something a little less daunting to wear? Oh, there's a darling pair. Delicate colour, small and sweet. Your maid insists they are merely house slippers. But what sort of slippers are made of kid and leather and satin? I mean, they're not even fluffy. Anyway, out you go on the town, in your prim but chic little slip-on shoes. Hello, back so soon. Oh heavens, you descended your front step and landed directly in a pig wallow of mud, which you're pretty sure is 90% horse excrement. Deep down, you know it's not just from horses. Come now, don't delude yourself, darling. It just makes this journey harder. In the 19th century, it is so dirty. Whether you're rich or poor, living on a farm or in the city, you're going to be ankle deep in filth wherever you go. Filthiest century ever. Some would argue that the 19th century was one of the filthiest times in all of Western history, particularly in any urban developed areas. Foulness is everywhere. Grime and rot cling to the very air, the buildings, the people. Even the soap is made out of lard and poison. There's no such thing as fresh air in the larger cities, unless the winds are blowing it in from other locations, usually at such an icy speed that the fresh air poses a greater risk than the miasma that it replaced. There's no electricity, and little available in the line of clean burning fuels, yet every home and business needs energy. So you must burn something like wood or coal. We burn for heat, we burn for light, and we burn for steam. The result is soot and smoke from hundreds of fires saturating the sky. Remember your street stretching before you, filled to the horizon with sewage, rotting offal and other garbage? Life requires people to perform actions that create waste. And the smoke that hangs above your city, the more solid pollution is there because it has nowhere else to go. Regarding the fetid road sludge that we'll have to call mud, one of the reasons it's so bad is that most of those streets weren't engineered. They just simply appeared as they were needed. Such streets lack all those little whispers of design and maintenance that would send runoff to gutters and ditches to be carried away. In case, instead, the runoff forms pools and collects in holes of stagnated, polluted water. In summertime, the mud won't be such a problem, unless it's a wet summer. And then in the warmer places, malaria, and in the colder ones, consumption. In summer, you will have dust, endless, choking dust, kicked up by every horse and carriage that passes. Now, don't bother starting about cobblestones. Yes, they exist, but they're not in every place. Most places don't, and I'm trying to make this as real as possible for you. Now, back to general filth in your new romantic life. Some things contribute more heavily to the problem. Take the issue of sewage treatment. Well, there is no sewage treatment. There are sometimes conduits that sort of feel like sewers. Streets and a few municipal pipes dump all matter of soggy refuse into these tunnels, and the tunnels in turn carry the awfulness far, far away. Well, not so far actually. Usually to the nearest, largest body of water, which is usually located right in the centre of town. Think of the Thames or the Seine, or for our American friends, the Hudson. That's it, isn't it? By 1860, for instance, the Thames was visited by thousands of tons of fecal matter every day from all the pipes and runoffs that emptied into it. Imagine the smell on a hot day. Lovely! And then get over it quickly, because the smell is nothing. The smell isn't the problem. The problem is that these bodies of water are where urban residents get their drinking water. For much of the 19th century, doctors didn't even know what germs were, and still certainly didn't think deadly invisible animals could exist to a fatal capacity in water like so many little tiny rabid unicorns. People died because of this. By the thousands they died. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, diseases that occur when your body desperately tries to flush unwelcome bacteria from its digestive tract, usually killing you by dehydration in the process. Especially when your loved ones try to soothe your thirst by giving you more poisoned water. Death patrols the Thames, which is filled with refuse. Dirty water didn't even enter people's heads as a source of illness. They believed that bad air caused disease, which at least was an improvement on the previous century. Their obsession was removing bad blood from the body by the half-gallon from dying patients. Some Victorian doctors still do this, so pick your physician wisely. Actually, don't bother going to the doctors, you know better, dear. You know, it would be wise during your visit to stick to tea, coffee and alcoholic beverages, because their methods of preparation kill bacteria. Now, we've come a long way, and no doubt one of your express intentions towards being a place where people don't discuss their bodily functions in casual company. And now here you are again, listening to your 19th century version mother complaining about her toilet took an exceptionally long time today. You might as well just have stayed in the 21st century and had the same discussion with her on your mobile phone. But stout hearts now. Toilet means something completely different. We appropriated the word for our modern plumbing fixture from the French, who said it more like toilette. And until well into the 20th century, a lady's toilet was her beauty routine, the work she did to make herself presentable. And then one day, that included pooping in an indoor flushable basin. But no lady wanted to say that, so it became part of her toilet. All humans, always, have striven to remove their bodily waste far from the areas where they did the rest of their living, except when overcrowding, as in the big cities, made that impossible. I think I probably skipped a couple of slides. Oh.
Sorry.
There we go, that's the one. Right, where am I? Sorry. This removal was done by one form or another of burying. Technically, that's all an outhouse is. You dig a hole, you fill it with the horrible unspeakableness that comes from your body, and when it's nearly full, you top it off with soil and move the building to sit over a new hole. Nature agreed with this process, because in just a few months' time, human waste becomes nearly indistinguishable from the rest of the soil around it. No one liked outhouses, particularly house-proud women. Ladies did the best they could within their means to make their privies bearable. Still, the necessary showcased everything a 19th century wanted to pretend wasn't there. From stinking cesspits right down to the unpleasant headlines on the newspaper she'd cut carefully into squares for her families to ink their bums up with. Very wealthy folks had managed to find ways to poop inside for centuries. That's the one. Even regular folks tended to nature's disgusting hole indoors when they could, usually at night. Chamber pots, also called the pot, with a jerry, night soil, commodes, slop jars, close stools, yes, gazunders, and my favourite, thunder mugs. Plus a dozen more charming descriptors that contain language a proper lady should avoid hearing in this century. They had been lying under beds for centuries. We'd actually never totally gotten rid of them. It's just that now they're plastic and have little cheery animals on that sing, "You're a super duper pooper" when they're used. And we call them potties or potty chairs. Incidentally, it was tiny rumps that were the leading cause of the puzzling two-seater outhouse. Can you go back one? Grown-up size holes could be fatal for children. I mean, would you want to pull your child out of that? Oh my God. Plus, rural families had significantly more children than we do now, and parents would have felt no compunction with sending them out en masse to use the facilities before bed, which of course they also shared. Many of us still undertake a personal interaction with feces. Any parent knows the screw-lipped breath hold involved in dumping out a 2-year-old's tiny but offensive poops from potty to toilet. But imagine having to do that for a whole house full of people, including grown men who drink more beer than water, and in a time when food conditions were such that you were near guaranteed to suffer diarrhoea on a household scale a couple of times a month.